What's going on, everybody? Captain Gonzo with that Flight Sim channel here for a more informal video that we've been meaning to do for a while and we just haven't tackled until now. Thanks to SayIntentions, I believe this video is going to help a lot of you guys out there in the community, especially the newer generation of simmers, understand a little bit better about ATC or air traffic control communications between yourself and whoever you're talking to on the other side. So keep in mind that Beyond ATC and SayIntentions are the two resources you'll see us using a lot, especially now for VFR flying. You'll see us on SayIntentions. It really has transformed the way we fly in VFR conditions, and we couldn't be happier. So what are my intentions today? Well, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing a quick VFR flight here from Orlando Executive, just north of Orlando International, to the southwest, maybe about 15-20 nautical miles southwest, to Kissimmee, which is where I did my initial flight training about 8-9 years ago, and I got my private pilot license. Alright guys, so what we're going to do, let's go ahead and fire up the old Cessna 172. We are in the Classic. This is exactly what I learned to fly in. Pretty identical. Now we're using some Garmin digital attitude indicator and HSIs, the G5 I think they're called, so a little bit different, but down to the basics they remain the same. So let's go ahead and get this puppy started. Clear prop. There's a good engine. Let's go up to 1,000 RPM. Let's close the windows. Let's bring those flaps up while we're sitting here. Let's get our avionics masters on. That's going to power on the avionics and the radio stack. So, what is going to be the layout of this training today? It's going to be very simple, okay? This is going to be tailored to those of you wanting to tackle on some VFR flying. I know a lot of you are in career mode, doing missions and whatnot, and having some fun, and really diving deep into IFR or instrument flight rules. However, I feel like sometimes it's good to just step away, step back a little bit, and enjoy the sim by doing some sightseeing with VFR or visual flight rules. So VFR communications are a little bit simpler compared to IFR, right? You don't really have CRAFT, for example. CRAFT is the acronym we use for instrument clearances, IFR clearances. So it stands for your clearance, your route, altitude, frequency, and your transponder code. When you're in VFR mode, you've got one squawk code that you would use here in Northern America, and that is 1200. That lets traffic controllers around you know that you are flying in visual flight rules. I believe in other parts of the world, if I'm not mistaken, it's 7000. So if you are somewhere in Europe and you fly out there, let me know what that code is. I'm pretty sure it's 7000, but I might be wrong. But anyways, let me show you what I do in real world. So this is exactly where I depart from Orlando Executive. We are on the west side of the airfield here. This is Shelter. I believe it's the west side. Might be... yeah. Let me see. Yep, it is the west. Just wanted to double check. So as you can see, we are here in Shelter, and what we're going to do is we're going to taxi out, and we're going to take runway 7 for the departure. That is the typical runway we have in use here at Orlando Executive. So I'm going to try to mimic my real world procedures here as best as I can, but keep in mind that this will be tailored strictly to the communications aspect and not so much, you know, the flying per se. You will see me try to replicate real flying conditions and procedures, but I'm not going to be as sophisticated or as detailed. So what I like to do in real world when I get the old Cessna 172 fired up, I taxi out of the ramp here. And yes, you're probably wondering, wait, Gonzo, you haven't talked to ground. Well, let's keep in mind that we are on the ramp. The ramp is not a controlled ground space here for the ground control, if that makes sense. So technically, you can just taxi around here on the ramp, so as long as you don't enter an active taxiway or a runway without having the clearance to do so. So this is what I do in real world. I taxi out. We're going to slip here just behind these hangars, and remember, this is still considered a ramp. So here we are, we're just taxiing along. Obviously, we don't have any traffic here right now. The scenery is okay for default. It's not exactly perfect, but it will do for this tutorial. So we're going to slip on behind here, behind the hangars here. And again, just to clarify, we are still on a ramp, so we don't have to talk to ground. Now, it's probably a good idea to be talking to ground from the second you're taxiing out, because everybody else that's around you in the airfield, especially in the same ramp, they're probably going to want to know where you're taxiing out of, what your intentions are, you know, because some people might just be doing a run-up or a quick ground taxi instruction and then coming back to the ramp. So it's a good idea to contact ground, but you don't have to until you're ready to depart from the ramp area to a controlled area like this taxiway. So this is where I typically come on the brakes here. Make sure nobody's behind me, nobody's around me. I'll get on the brakes. And let's stand by. I'm going to tune into the ground frequency and then give them a call. Alright, so taking a look here at my GNS 530, you can see that I've got 121.4. That is our ground frequency. The standby frequency was my ATIS. That's for my weather information. And it looks like we'll be expecting runway 25, which is the opposite end of runway 7. So let me zoom in here. So we are down here. We're going to take off from runway 25 all the way on the other end here. And we're going to head westbound. And that's going to set us up beautifully for our flight down to Kissimmee, which is that Class Delta airspace just down here. So let me go ahead and give ground a call. And we're going to let them know a few things. First, who's calling, right? So who we are. In this instance, my call sign, which is what I really fly in, is November 90515 Sierra. We're going to let them know what our intentions are, where we're at, and then take a listen for their response and make sure that we read back all instructions clearly and properly. So here we go. Verify you're on the right frequency. We are on 121.4, and let's give them a call. Orlando ground, good afternoon. Skyhawk November 90515 Sierra with Bravo. Requesting taxi to the active for a westbound departure.
Skyhawk 15 Sierra, taxi to runway 25 via Golf Alpha, cross runway 13, then Alpha 1.
Taxi to runway 25 via Golf Alpha, cross runway 13, then Alpha 1 for Skyhawk 90515 Sierra. Okay, so you heard ground give me that instruction. So we are holding short here. This is where we're physically at on this ramp area, and you can see how there's those solid black lines with the gray. That's just letting you know that's the ramp area that is not controlled. However, you can see the taxiways don't have any lines through them, which means those are active, which means you cannot be on them until cleared to do so by ground or tower or whoever is on frequency. So we're going to be taking Golf, then Alpha. Here's runway 13, which we've been cleared across. Remember, that is very important. They did tell you to cross. Otherwise, they would have said, taxi via Golf Alpha, hold short of runway 13, and then at that point, you would await further clearance. However, we're cleared to continue on Alpha all the way down to the end, and there's Alpha 1 at the end of runway 25. And what we're going to do is, we're going to come down on Alpha, and then we're going to line ourselves up here for the taxiway run-up area to do a quick run-up before we get ready to take the runway. So here we go. We're just going to start taxiing. We've been cleared. Nobody on the right. Nobody on the left. Taxiway is ours. Here we are following Alpha. Pay attention to those taxiway signs. It can get a little confusing. And here we are approaching runway 13, so let's get our landing lights and strobe lights on. Making sure the runway is clear. It is clear. We're going to taxi across it. You can see the solid black box there showing Alpha. It lets you know what taxiway you're currently on. And remember, in real world, and in the simulator, especially with resources like SayIntentions, you can ask for progressive taxi. You can let them know, hey, I'm unfamiliar with this airport. Like if this is the first time you're landing here or taking off here, you can let air traffic controllers know, and they will literally walk you step by step. Don't ever be embarrassed. And remember, we're in a simulator, right? So Have the freedom, have the courage to ask for help when you need it. There is nothing wrong with doing that, and actually, it can actually prevent you from making a critical mistake. You can inadvertently cut off other traffic that is already taxiing on perpendicular taxiways or converging taxiways. So remember guys, progressive taxi is a real world tool that is available to pilots, and I've seen it being used from private pilots like myself all the way up to regional pilots, commercial pilots flying all types of planes if they are unfamiliar. So we'll continue taxiing on Alpha. We'll pull up into the run-up area and we'll see you in just a few. Alright, we're taxiing into the run-up area here. Let's set ourselves up right here. Let's get the parking brake on. Let's make sure the mixture is full rich. We're going to bring power up to about 1800 RPM. There's 18. We're going to start doing our magnetos check. Again, keeping an eye on that tachometer, watching for that RPM drop. Back to both. Going to the right mag now. Pretty similar in drop. Nothing greater than 50 RPM between the two of them. Now it's a good time to scan your engine instruments, right? So we're checking our fuel flow, your exhaust gas temperature, oil temperature and pressure. Check your vacuum and your amps. Everything looks good, but whoa, check this out. Look at my heading indicator and my magnetic compass. My magnetic compass says I am facing pretty much due northwest. So my heading indicator does not align. So let's go ahead and adjust that now. Somewhere about there. We'll verify it once we get on the runway. We just want to make sure that the heading indicator and the magnetic compass agree so that we're not, looking backwards. Okay, now that we've checked our engine and our magnetos, let's check flight controls. They feel good. Everything is normal. Power back to idle. Make sure the engine doesn't quit on us. There we go. Let's bring power back up to 1000 RPM. Let's get rid of that parking brake. And remember that ground instructed us to taxi all the way up to Alpha 1, so you don't necessarily have to tell them, hey, I'm going to go hit the run-up. It's a good courtesy to let them know that you've finished your run-up procedure, but you don't necessarily have to. Now, if you have a queue of aircraft lined up here, I highly and strongly recommend you do that. It's probably a good idea, good practice. It keeps everybody on the same page, but for now, we're going to take the right here. We're going to hold short of runway 25, because remember, we've only been cleared to taxi up to this point, but not to take the active runway. So there's Alpha 1 on the taxiway sign. There's the hold short lines. We're going to hold short, and now we're going to tune into tower frequency, which is 118.7. Okay, and before we get going, let me just review something here that is specific for the Orlando Executive Airport area. So you can see down here, this is your Orlando International, KMCO. Captain Flako and I, we love flying out of here because this is our home airport, and we've worked at this airport for many years, and we used to, I should say. Now, you see these solid blue lines that are shown on your map here on the EFB? These are called Class Bravo shelves. Now, I'm not going to get too into the weeds with airspaces, but Class Bravos are typically your busiest airports, such as Orlando International. And as you can see, it's a little convoluted here within the Orlando Executive Airport airspace, because you've got traffic that could be northbound or southbound on either departing or approaching runways here. So what happens is, as you get closer to the airport, these shelves, right, you can see these partitions, will decrease in altitude, meaning that this is where Orlando International and Orlando Approach are controlling in and out traffic. Because we're in visual flight rules or VFR, traffic or air traffic control expects you to understand and know what your shelves are around the Class Bravo so that you don't inadvertently climb and pierce through those levels. So for example, right here, if I remember correctly, there is an area that it's from the surface up to 700 feet above ground level is controlled by the Class Bravo. So, because we're in visual flight rules and we're going to be departing to the west, we're going to stay at 1,000 feet until we clear out somewhere out here, which I believe the shelf increases to about 3,000 feet, then 6,000 feet, and then you're outside of their airspace and you no longer have to worry about it. But because we're coming back into Kissimmee, you can see that it also falls within another shelf. But this is more for those of you who are real AV geeks or real pilots and want to practice extreme realism. I don't think SayIntentions will really tell me those instructions per se, but I'm going to assume that they will. And so what I'm going to do is climb out of runway 25 heading westbound. So we're going to climb, and then we're going to make a turn to 270 to head due west, and then we'll make our way back to the southeast to line ourselves up with runway 15 here into Kissimmee. So now let me give Tower a call and let them know that we are ready for departure. And remember, identify yourself, where you're at, what your intentions are, and read back all instructions clearly. So here we go. Orlando Exec Tower, Skyhawk 90515 Sierra, holding short runway 25 at Alpha 1, ready for departure to the west.
Skyhawk 9515 Sierra, Executive Tower, runway 25, winds 265 at 9 are cleared for takeoff.
Cleared for takeoff, runway 25 for Skyhawk 90515 Sierra. Alright, so you heard them tell us our wind, so you don't have to read back the winds. If you want to, that's fine. It's just good for you to understand what the current winds are like. Anyways, we've been cleared, so landing lights are on. Approach end looks clear, departure end looks good. Strobe lights are on. We've got our transponder on altitude reporting. We're gonna stop here. Let's go ahead and go to elapsed time, start the timer. There we go. Now we'll gradually increase power. And full power here. There's 50 knots, 55, rotating. And just like that, we are airborne. Keep an eye out on that turn slip coordinator down here. Make sure that ball is centered, so apply a little bit of right rudder. And let's make that slight turn to the west now, 270. And again, being mindful of the Class Bravo just above us, we're going to stay at 1,000 feet until we're several miles out and I know that we are clear of these shells. And now we just got to wait for Orlando Exec Tower to hand us off because we are going to be departing their airspace. And because we're in visual flight rules, we did not request flight following. We are going to be told to change frequency. So we just await that in just a few moments. By the way, guys, we are running the Sim Update 1 beta, and so far, so good. I can definitely see some improvements on the ground, but nothing too crazy just yet. Performance hasn't really changed for me, at least. So let me know below in the comments what you think of that Sim Update 1. I know a lot of you are eager and anxiously waiting for some performance updates for this broken sim, but for now, we'll just have to make do with what we've got and enjoy the product as best as we can. Alright, so we're going to assume now we are clear to climb up to at least 2,000 feet. I believe the shelf here is 3,000. I could be wrong. I have to go and look at my charts again, but again, not being too realistic. So we're going to go back full power, increase pitch, get on that rudder again, and you see we're still flying due west. And then we're going to take it up to about 2,000 feet, level off, and let's see if Orlando exec hands us off.
Skyhawk 15 Sierra, you're leaving my airspace. Frequency change approved.
Frequency change approved for Skyhawk 9515 Sierra. See you soon. And you see, that's all you got to do. If you're in VFR flying conditions and you are not expecting to pick up flight following or anything like that, which, by the way, if you do request flight following, and I will be demonstrating that in another video, you will be given a departure frequency to start contacting them once you are airborne and hand it off. But for now, ATC assumes that you are going to be responsible for your own traffic separation. You're going to abide by those airspace restrictions. You will remain clear of clouds, which is your first rule for VFR flying, and you will safely navigate to your destination, which we will be doing here momentarily. So, all right, guys, I'm going to cut the video here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pick back up shortly when I'm within maybe 15 to 20 miles from Kissimmee, and I'm going to show you how I do it in real world as I begin to approach that airfield. Alright, so I've engaged the autopilot to hold us here about 2,000 feet, roughly on a northwest heading. I want to create some distance between Kissimmee and our present position. So while we're doing that, let's go ahead and take a look here at the airport diagram for Kissimmee. So if you don't know how to get there, you can just go to your EFB, go to the Flight Planner tab, find the airfield that you want to approach. In this case, Kissimmee, Kilo India Sierra Mike. We're going to click that icon, more info. You can see that frequencies are not available. However, you can go here to the Maps button, find the Airport tab, hit the airport diagram, and voila. So we can tune into ATIS to see what the weather is currently like at Kissimmee. This is your first step when you are approaching your destination. So let's go ahead and tune our COM1 radio to 128.775. Let's do that here.
E00 feet. Arriving and departing runways 33, 24 advise on course heading, altitude, and if flight following is requested. Read back all runway and hold short instructions. Advise on initial contact. You have information November.
Alright, so we've got a rough idea of what to expect. Looks like we're going to be expecting runway 33, which is the opposite end here of runway 15. So we're going to be approaching from somewhere up here relative to the airport, right? We're going to be coming from the northwest. So what I can anticipate is a left downwind here for runway 33, which means we will come down here, make a left base, and then a left final turn for runway 33. And actually, let me pick up that information once again.
Advise on initial contact. You have information November.
Okay, so information November. Now, I didn't pay attention to the winds, the altimeter, and none of that, but that's because I set the weather parameters for this current flight, so I know that winds are relatively calm, and I'm not too worried about them. So now we can tune in to the tower frequency, 124.45. So let's set that up. So there we go. We've got tower frequency on our active COM1. That's all we need for now. And I know some of you are going to be like, wait, so you're teaching us how to do VFR flying and you're not even listening to the full ATIS. I know. It's not 100% accurate, but I did tell you in the beginning we were not going to do everything 100%. I want you to just focus on the communications. Now, with that being said, keep in mind, I am a private pilot. That's it. I am not an instructor. I am not instrument rated. So I feel like there's no real need to say this, but I still do. Don't ever take anything I teach you here in the simulator for real world flying. I merely try to teach you based on what I do in real life, but that does not mean this is 100% correct. This is just what I do. I know that it is legal. I know that I abide and maintain all restrictions as applicable to a VFR pilot. So let's go ahead and continue turning southeast. And what we want to do is we want to wait till we're within maybe 15 to 10 nautical miles from Kissimmee. Now you can see here on my GNS 530 that I've already set Kissimmee on a direct 2 from the present position that we were at earlier. So it is showing that we are maybe 19 nautical miles away, so we're still a bit too far to give them a call. They're probably going to be like, okay, yeah, just give me a call when you're 10 miles away from us, and then we'll see where everything is at. Remember that air traffic control's job is to sequence aircraft in and out of the respective terminals or airfields safely and with proper spacing. So communications are vital, and you got to make sure that you abide and respect all instructions given to you, especially as a VFR pilot. You're not following any instrument procedures, you're not following any specific altitudes, you're merely visually maintaining visual separation from obstacles, other aircraft, from clouds, and etc. So that is your responsibility. Air traffic control does not carry that responsibility solely. If you were in instrument flying rules, that would be a whole different story, and I promise you we will cover that in depth in another video. And remember that this is more so for our newer generation of simmers trying to learn the basics. So before you dive deep into IFR flying, give this video a try and see if you can practice on your own, even with the default air traffic control. Okay, so we'll give it a few seconds here flying on this heading. However, remember that the traffic pattern altitude around most airfields is 1,000 feet. So we're at 2,000 feet, so we have to decrease our altitude. So what we're going to do is, as we're descending down to 1,000 feet, we're going to disengage the autopilot. And let's go ahead and begin that gradual descent to 1,000 feet. Now it is vital, unlike I did, to listen to that ATIS so that you have your proper altimeter setting for the airfield you're approaching. Otherwise, you can be off by 100 feet or 200 feet, and I promise you, air traffic control will let you know. So as we continue descending here, I'm going to cut the video forward in just a few seconds, and I'll show you how to contact the tower. Okay, so we're about 13.5 nautical miles away from Kissimmee. Again, we're going to give them a call at around 10 to, just maybe a little further from that, to let them know that we're inbound. So here's the way it's going to go. Once again, you're going to call them by their name. In this instance, Kissimmee Tower. We're going to say our call sign, Skyhawk 951 Sierra. That is my tail number. That is the real-world airplane that I'm used to flying. And then let them know what your intentions are. Before you let them know your intentions, you want to let them know that you've picked up the weather information. So you can say something like, hey, this is 951 Sierra. We've got information November or information Romeo, whatever information is current. And that lets them know that you have the proper altimeter. You understand what runways are being used for departures and arrivals. And it gives you better situational awareness. If you don't give them that feedback on the initial call, they'll probably ask you, do you have the latest information? Or they might be friendly and just tell you, hey, current altimeter is this. So that's the way it's going to flow. And in this case, we can be expecting maybe 8 left downwind to runway 33, like we briefed earlier. So let's give it a few more seconds here, and I'll make that call to see what tower wants us to do. Kissimmee Tower, good afternoon. Skyhawk 951 Sierra inbound from the northwest with information November, full stop.
Skyhawk 9515 Sierra, Kissimmee Tower, enter left downwind for runway 24.
We'll enter a left downwind for runway 24 for Skyhawk 9515 Sierra. Okay, so they changed it up on us a little bit. So instead of runway 33, we're going to be expecting runway 24. So how do we know how to enter? Well, think about the path that we're coming in right now. We're approaching somewhere from the northwest, right? So if you're following my cursor here, this is the relative direction of travel that we're currently facing. So you can see we're on a heading of 150. There's runway 15. So we are parallel to that runway. Now, if we're expecting a left downwind, which is what we've been instructed to do so, we have to find runway 24. There's 24. So a left downwind means we have to come in here at some point and enter the left downwind heading parallel on the opposite direction, which is runway 6, right? So we'll be heading east, northeast-ish, and then we'll make that left base, and then left final. So I'm going to show you how we set ourselves up here. We're going to come in here, then we're going to make that left downwind entry for runway 24. All right, so we're just about 3 nautical miles to the northwest still of the airfield here, so let's go ahead and disengage the autopilot. I see runway 6 right there. And again, we're going to be landing on runway 24, which is on the opposite side here. So now we're going to enter the left downwind headed in this direction. Making sure I'm scanning for any departing traffic. And remember, keep an eye out on your altimeter. Make sure you're staying at that traffic pattern altitude of 1,000 feet.
Skyhawk 15 Sierra, winds 275 at 5, runway 24 cleared to land.
Cleared to land runway 24 for Skyhawk 90515 Sierra. Well, as you can see, I don't have to give them that midfield call because they've already cleared me to land. So now we continue the standard traffic turns here. So we'll stay at 1,000. Looking at the runway. Once we're beamed the numbers, we'll reduce power, start a gradual descent, and set ourselves up for that left base and then final to land. There's the numbers. Let's do about 1,700 RPM. And let's give ourselves a little bit of room here. All right, beginning the left base turn. Let's get flaps 10 degrees. Still a little bit high, no problem. Let's make that left final turn now. Keeping an eye on that airspeed indicator. Let's go ahead and set flaps for landing. So we're a little bit high, as you can see by the PAPI, all white. So let's come down a little bit. Let's reduce power. Let's keep that nose down. This is a great approach speed here, though, 55, 60 knots. And now our eyes are on that runway, guys. We're going to roll out here. Here's golf. We can take golf to the right. And let's cross the runway hold short lines there and clean the bird up.
Skyhawk 15 Sierra, contact ground on 121.7.
Alright, calling ground on 121.7 for Skyhawk 15 Sierra. See ya. Alright, so we're off the runway. Let's go ahead and bring those flaps up. Strobe lights can come off. Landing lights can come off. Let's lean the mixture just a tad. So you heard that, right? Tower already told us, go ahead and give ground a call. So now we got to tune our COM1 active to 121.7. So we'll do that. There's 121.7, switch it over. Now, this is the exact same thing we did when we departed, except it is the opposite, right? We have to give them a call. Again, identifying ourselves, calling them by their facility name, and what our intentions are. So right here, even though this is not an accurate rendition, this is the signature at Kissimmee. There actually should be an overhang here, not a huge building like that. That is wild. But we're going to let them know that we want to taxi to Signature. And that's it. So let's give them a call. And we're going to let them know that we're clear of runway 24 on that call. Kissimmee ground, good afternoon. Skyhawk 9515 Sierra, clear of 24 at Golf. Requesting taxi to Signature.
Skyhawk 15 Sierra, taxi to Signature Aviation via Golf. Good day.
Taxiing to Signature via Golf for Skyhawk 9515 Sierra. So we know we're on taxiway Golf, so if we continue straight ahead, we know that we're going to enter the ramp area. And once again, remember, once you're on the ramp, you're no longer being controlled by ground control. However, it is good etiquette and good courtesy for all of you, all other planes around you, and yourself, to probably make it a good habit to give them a call before you taxi out. But that's going to be all down to your comfort level as a pilot. But remember, we're in a simulator, so take ownership. This is your own. This is your simulator, your airplane, your airport. You do as you want, and you can handle some screaming and some yelling. No big deal. So this is the east ramp. I used to work here as well at this Signature location. We're gonna hit the brakes here, turn around. There we go. Let's go ahead and set that parking brake, kill the mixture, turn our transponder off, avionics master can come off, all electrical can come off, mags and ignition switch to off, the key would come out, you place it somewhere on the glare shield, go ahead and kill that fuel shutoff valve, and lastly, turn your master switch off. So I hope this tutorial has helped you get a better understanding on VFR flying and specifically ATC communications as it applies for VFR operations. Again, like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't go in depth as you would probably be used to with IFR or instrument flight rule conditions, but this video was intended to target our newer audience of simmers that perhaps come to us with no flying experience whatsoever, even in the previous generations of Flight Simulator. So remember the basics, okay? Know your call sign. What's your tail number? What's your flight ID? Know the facility that you're calling ahead of time. Make sure you call them by their proper name. And remember, in airports such as here in Orlando Exec, these are Class Delta, you have to establish two-way communications at a minimum to enter the airspace. So I don't want to get too deep into airspace. We can do a separate video one day on that. But those are your basics. Third, what are your intentions? What are you doing? Why are you calling them? Are you coming in for a touch and go? Are you coming in for a full stop landing like we did today? Have that ready. Make sure you tune into the ATIS frequency beforehand. Have the weather information ready so that you know what to expect on that airfield and understand, or at least expect, the traffic pattern for whatever runway is being used. Guys, I want to thank you for tuning in. This is a very informal video. Nothing special, nothing crazy, very raw. And I want to thank you for taking your time to watch us. Keep in mind, as I always say, take everything I showed you with a grain of salt and just practice. That is the only way you're going to get better at this. Don't be afraid. Jump on VATSIM. Give it a try. Just find a controller that's online and let them know you want to do some VFR practice and let them know you're going to be in the traffic pattern or whatever. But with that being said, I want to thank you once again. This is Captain Gonzo with that Flight Sim channel. Wishing you guys all smooth landings, happy flying, and we'll see you on the next one.